model, describe the environment, and generate reports. And here we have a data flow diagram showing how a user interacts with my program and with my data store. So we have different icons for different kind of entities here. So for example, here you see that the rectangle is an external interactor, a circle is a process, code you can say, and the two horizontal lines is the data store. So for example, if I create a new data store here, you see there that I get the validation here, so I can see I have to do these things to validate this diagram. So I can do that, but I will not do this. I will instead change the name of the data to something other, so we can follow it better. Cocoa data. The next thing, when I have done the diagram of the new functionalities, I want to do an analyze. So here I have all the elements that I have drawn in the diagram. So for example, I have the Cocoa data here, the database. And here I have the sprites for a data store. So for data store, we think that tampering, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service is important to causes for threats. And for example, we can go on tampering, and here we have questions that we can use to analyze this new feature. So I can go and look about the questions and see how I will answer the questions. So for example, are all permissions set to protect all objects? Wow, I don't have, what should we call it? No access control in plan. And here I have the possibility to write information and see how the completion of this thread that I have seen, how they are fixed. I can also file a bug into Team Foundation server to get it more managed than it is only in this tool. The next thing I want to think about is that I think about the database, and when I think about information disclosure, I think about how about backup tapes? Are they secure? I will go to the environment then and describe this concern to me. So I have an external security nodes here, and I will add a security external nodes saying how about database tapes. I also have dependencies on my project that are rather important to be aware of. So I will have, for example, a very common dependency, MSXML, and it's version 6.0. And origin, is it we or another organization? Say it's external. So here I also have the possibility to record these things. And the last thing I want to show is generate reports. So we have the possibility to generate an ordinary threat model report, a bug report, diagrams also, analyze, and recommended fuzzing. So we see here that we have a suggestion to do a fuzzing test from the user to my process. So this was the ALM, Agile process combined with SDL, and also the threat modeling tool. And back to you, Johan.
Okay, so I'll just steal that. Is it okay if I'm in your pockets? No, keep it one. So what you actually saw here is the threat modeling tool and the basis of security development lifecycle is actually to, once again, try to identify the security threats and the security issues that might arise in an application very early in the process, instead of having a sort of a reactive process when you have already built the features and doing the testing instead. So that naturally helps. If you're going into some more details on the code and really drill down in some of these features, we have something called the Web Protection Library. This is kind of a new aspect. It's already have been released in 3 versions actually. It's up into 3.1 I think actually. But it is something that used to be called anti-cross-site scripting library. Have everyone used that earlier? Okay, a couple one. What's happening now is that this is getting injected into something called the security runtime engine, actually, and will be depreciated in later releases, the anti-cross-site scripting. But it's still available then in the security runtime environment or engine, but it's called like sort of the anti-cross-site scripting. Well, how that actually used is actually what the security runtime engine is doing is HTTP modules or handlers that will be leveraged without the developers actually knowing it, I should say, how these features are getting injected into the code and into the application. It's actually looking into requests and response headers and such, and seeing if you can identify it through whitelists and different algorithms, like cross-site scripting, SQL injections. We are looking into clickjacking and also cross-site request forgery attacks that will be identified with this engine moving forward. This can be downloaded today in a source code way from Codeplex. It's a very easy, if you know about Codeplex, it's actually wpl.codeplex.com, where you can download this source code and try it out. It works both for .NET Framework 3.5 and .NET Framework 4.0, which is interesting with the 4.0 release, or the version there is actually using the Managed Extensibility Framework, or MEF that it's called, to inject these types of logic into the application without the users or developers being aware that they are being handled. So it's like layering these security features or the mitigations for these attacks outside of the developer's environment. This naturally is a good thing for the execution environment, but not something that helps with the competences that the developers needs to have. So that comes back to some of the other tools that we have, like the static code analysis tools. And I'm guessing that all of you are familiar with FXCOP, which is a kind of an old tool now that has been used for several years for doing static code analysis. But FXCOP is actually something that is targeted only or specifically on security features, like the code access security model available in .NET Framework. And if you are, as a developer, are using those technologies in the right way. So instead, Microsoft developed an internal tool called cat.net, or code analysis tool, which helped us to analyze our own source codes when we wrote line of business applications and applications with managed code within Microsoft. So that tools have now been released in beta versions, and I think there's actually a 1.0 version also that can be used. But we are looking at something called the 2.0 release, and that tool is also a static code analysis tool that injects into Visual Studio 2010 or 2008 and actually analyzes the code not only for security features, or actually not, since FXCOP is handling the code access security features, this is actually looking at the other code and with much more robust algorithms on how to actually analyze the application and the source code. And they are using not actually the C# or VB code, it's using actually the MSIL, so the intermediate language code, and analyzing that code and see if you have some security issues there. And this is a tool I'm not expecting you to be very familiar with, so I think I'm going to demonstrate this in sort of the same way as Doug did here. So I'm going to use the ASP.NET MVC application. I'm going to skip the unit test here. And when you download and install the cat.net, is an MSI install, which you download and you run, and then you also have a script file that needs to be run to inject these rules into Visual Studio 2010. What that then helps you with is if we go into, like, just do an ordinary build here, we will see that we have nothing specific. We have an all succeed. We can also do this code analysis and see if that brings up anything specific. And we have no warnings whatsoever currently. That also is based on what type of code analysis rules we are using now. So I'm going to code analysis tab in the project settings. We're now using the Microsoft minimum recommended rules. We can enable also the code analysis on build, which means that we will run code analysis each time we build the application, which could be a good thing, but that also depends on if you are breaking the builds or if you are actually just getting warnings. So this is something that you need to look into if you're using like continuous integration, where you might don't want to break the build on all of these design issues, but you might want to break the build on nightly builds instead. We had this discussion, and we can take that discussion also, I think, in the booth if that's interesting. So instead, I'm just using the Microsoft minimum recommended rules now. We have all of these security rules and such that you can use, or you can use the all rules. But what I've done is actually enabled something called a demo set of rules. And if I open up this, I'm using the cat.net rules now. So these are actually in the Microsoft.web configuration security or Microsoft.web security. Is that visible? Yeah. So what I can do there is actually can say that these design flaws or these common mistakes that can be analyzed and also mitigated is actually either considered a warning or it's something that could be considered an error. So I'll save this, and then I'll do a rebuild once again. So I'm using this cat.net now to analyze, and I'll see that I will actually get errors which breaks the build as a developer looking into, say, I need to set the validate request attribute to true in the web config file instead of false, which is apparently the default behavior in the MVC project. So this helps me naturally to catch these flaws that I might have done as a developer. But it's something also that can help me grow as a developer with my competence and understand, okay, these are the things that I need to do before I run the build, otherwise I will break it. And if you also use these cool features like dolls or such that dances when you break the build, or highlights, or big hats or something on people, you will kind of early in the process realize that developers actually want to grasp these errors earlier than breaking the build. This is cat.net, and we are looking at a release short, I hope. I was hoping for like this week or something, but hopefully in a couple of weeks then. So we'll have something to do in the summertime. Yeah, that's a good thing. Another tool that might not be considered to be a security tool, but it's something that naturally raises the quality of the code that is being written, and also something that can also help raise the awareness on fuzzing and parameters, injections and such, is the Pecks tool. This is something currently being developed by, I think it's Microsoft Research actually that's doing this. And it's something that automatically generates unit tests or test suites based on analysis on the code. So this gives the code that you have written high code coverage, which is more or less the ambition and the vision with the project also, without having to write all of this mandatory unit test codes by hand. Instead, it automatically generates those for you. If you also combine this with a mocking framework or stubbing framework called moles, which actually uses delegates to replace .NET methods like virtual methods and such. It's get very flexible and something very efficient also to be used. All of this also can be downloaded today, both with documentation, videos on how to use it. And naturally, as I'm saying that you can download everything, I have to demonstrate it. So I'm going to do that also in a very easy way. I'm going to just create a class library. I'm going to replace this with a snippet, I think. No, let's go for, here we go. So this is a static class, which just capitalizes strings when I pass into it. So how can I use Pecks with this? And I have installed Pecks, and it just integrates into the environment. Like when I right-click within this method, it says run Pecks. So I run Pecks, and then it wants me to save this project. I'm using this Express edition, or Express version of, not Express edition, I'm using the Express features actually. That doesn't save all my temporary projects. But now Pecks is running and analyzing this class and code. So I will get back this report here. And it says like this big black here says failed test. And this actually means that we don't want to have null references exceptions being thrown back at us. So it says that this is an error that we have to address. So I can right-click that and actually use Pecks to add a precondition to the code. So if I'm going to do this a bit more flexible here. I think we have that one. So I do that this, and I use